Alex, thank you very much for being here with us today. I really appreciate your time. I originally met Alex at Virginia Commonwealth University in the photography department. Um, and at that time, you were focused on photography, right?
Yeah.
Nice. And then since then, Alex's career has taken off, and I'm now just sort of honored to have known you, still know you, and just really impressed with how you have managed to end up where you are, and also like the breadth of your interests as far as like my main pitch is like you're working in the movies, but there's so much more that you do that I'm also like very tantalized by. Is that weird to say?
No, not at all. I have too many hobbies, so
Nice. Yeah. Oh, what did my partner said just yesterday? They're like, "Oh yeah, Alex is doing the bird thing, right?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's the bird thing." Yeah. I'll let you talk about that if you want later on.
yeah, we'll get into it.
Nice, excellent. I have made screen sharing available for you. Thank you again, Alex, for spending time with us today, and I'll turn it over to you if that's okay.
Okay, awesome. Hi, I'm Alex. I am looking for the screen sharing button because it's not at the bottom. Hold on a sec. Oh, it's right here
Sure.
in green. I'm insane. Okay, there we go. Share. Cool. So,
Nice. Got
do, do,
it.
do, do. Hello. My name is Alex Coyle. I went to the aforementioned Virginia Commonwealth University, and I graduated in 2017. I did 5 years of college, so I got a little extra credentials, and I did 2 degrees, one in photography and film, and one in creative advertising. And then I also did a certificate in product innovation because I'm just so indecisive and have to try everything. But that makes life fun, right? So now I work as a camera assistant in the Union Local 600 for the motion picture, film, and television industry. I'm also on my union's sustainability committee because I care passionately about the earth, talking about the demise of Western society. Our
Exactly. Yeah.
industry, yeah, our industry is super not friendly to the environment. And so I'm trying to change that in little ways that I can. So anyway, like who am I? What's my street cred? Why should you care? Maybe listen to me. This is my most recent screenshot of my IMDb as of today. So I've been super fortunate to work on like some tentpole productions, as they're called, and gotten to learn a lot from some of the best people in the industry, and gotten to travel too, which is just such a great thing to do in life. You know? So what did I do before my life now to kind of get to where I am now? In college, I did internships. I did one locally at a production company, and then I did one across the country in California at an ad agency where I worked in their post-production house. Um, I was always emailing people who were kind of like tangential to the film industry and being like, hey, would love to get you some coffee. Can you tell me about your experience? And that is super fruitful. Make sure you buy their coffee, of course. They're giving you their time. But mostly I was just surviving because with my 2 degrees, I was like jam-packed with classes and just trying to make it to the end. And by the end of 5 years, I was like, oh my God, I'm so ready to not be in college. But now I miss it dearly. And it's truly an incredible space that you have that is really hard to find outside of school to like talk critically about things. And there's something very special about that. So after college, after graduation, it was like tons of odd jobs. Um, I tried to put a photo in here. Anyway, tons of odd jobs. You know, like I was stuffing photos in mailers at the photo lab. I was doing school sports photography. I was working at the laser engraving company. I even dug a grave for $100. It was like it was
What
for a
the
mission.
what?
It was like some historical piece, and they wanted to do a drone shot, so they couldn't have like tractor like tracks in the shot, and it was too cheap for VFX. So they're like, oh, we'll just hire some broke student to dig a hole,
That's
10 feet.
incredible. Man, I'd dig a hole
Um,
for $100. Yeah, bring it on.
I don't recommend it, especially in Virginia. You hit the water table after like 5 feet, so it was just mud. But it was really just like, how can I make ends meet? I got a grant from my school to make an art project, which, okay, sweet, my hyperlink still works. Some friends and I got this grant to go to a decommissioned particle accelerator at the US Department of Energy's headquarters in Illinois. Do, 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 do. So there is me inside one of the data rooms, or I honestly am not too sure. Um, but we took a lot of photos, we interviewed a bunch of scientists, and we made this like projected installation with sound piece thing that we then debuted at a local art festival. Um, So that was like really exciting to set myself up to have a project to work on right after college. It's like, okay, I got this grant money. I'm going to do this thing. And that was a lot of fun. A friend from college was working at this art center out in Montana, and they needed more help. And I looked at the job posting and it's like, come out to Montana for a year. I'm like, I don't know if I'm like ready to relocate for a year. So I wrote them, I responded to the listing and I was like, hey, not sure a year's in the cards for me, but I'd be super down to come right now for like a month or so. And they were like, okay, we'll take it. So I went out there and, was out in, -10 degrees shooting stuff and helping them catch up on their editing backlog and just kind of helping helping them out. And I think it just goes to show like even if you see a job that's maybe not what you think, don't hesitate to apply anyways and offer what you can bring and maybe that'll work out. Um I was really trying, I majored in photography and I majored in advertising. And I kind of realized after my internships that I didn't really want to do either, but something more in the middle. And that's kind of where I started gravitating towards the film industry. So I'm like, okay, how do I get on sets? Had coffee with people. I, like I would go out to the casting call for extras, just like, okay, let me get to the office. And they were filming a historical piece in town, and I had just dyed my hair red. But whatever, I like still went to the casting call and was like, hey, I'm here. Also, while I'm here, who can I talk to in the camera department? And like just tried to get my foot in the door however I could. And, that snowballed one thing to another. And eventually, there were so many jobs in town at once that I kind of got expedited into the union because we were strapped for crew. Um, so I got my first union job, worked with a lot of people who were from LA, and then worked a show making union wages. And I was like, all right, it's time to move across the country. So I did. Um, I was debating like LA, Atlanta, and New York are kind of like your big film hubs. And personally, I just didn't want to move further south, and I didn't want to work in the cold of New York. So I moved to LA because I really liked California from my visits when I had been there. Yeah, it's super expensive though. Uh, the gas prices there were from like maybe like 2 years ago. It's not this horrible right now. It's maybe like almost $5 at Costco. So it's better. But
Good.
it's still
That's soul crushing. Oh my God.
it is. It's super soul crushing, and my car takes premium, and I'm like, um, and like I came from this cool apartment in Richmond, which was like downtown, and you could walk to the river, and it was super cheap, and it was really nice. And then I moved to LA, and it's like, oh yeah, rent a place, but like the fridge isn't provided. You got to bring your own stove, and you're like, oh my God, what this? How is this legal? Um, Everyone has roommates. Parking sucks. Like a lot of in the like more city parts, you have no parking or you have tandem parking. Sometimes I've seen apartments that are three spaces like all in one line, and you just have to shuffle with your roommates like when that person wants to leave with their car. Um, it's a lot. Uh, but it's Hollywood. You know, I came here because the film industry was born out of here, and I wanted to learn from the people who had like been with it since the beginning. And like only in LA do you have like third generation camera assistants, which is like a little dramatic and unnecessary at times, but there is so much to learn from people who like learned from the beginning. Being in LA, like climate change is very real. You know, this summer I've already reported two fires just while driving, and um, it's a little daunting, but there's tons of resources here. You know, like the American Society of Cinematographers has their clubhouse here where they do screenings and lectures, and there's so many relevant museums, and it really, there's everything here. So yeah, the film industry itself is pretty nutty. The only thing that's certain is that it isn't certain. It's very feast or famine, so you need to be wise with your money. The days are really long, like we're each contract negotiation, we're fighting to make the penalties for long days steeper and steeper, but at the end of the day, a producer or a production company, if they have the money, they don't care. And they'll just like, okay, we'll go into double time, go into triple time. Um, so you need to be able to work a lot on your feet. Managing stress for the really long days is something I'm still working on. It's because they're long days, they put a strain both on your relationship with others and with your coworkers. And when you have great coworkers, it's great. And when you don't, it's horrible. So, just being able to navigate that is important. Being quick at the phone. I get a text and says, "Hey, got a job, 7 months, Africa and Montana. You interested?" And you're like, "Okay, is this my life now?" And you got to make a decision and talk and have out the conversation you need to and figure it out efficiently. Um, that being said, I have gotten to travel to several countries for work, and it's been incredible. And at the end of the day, I love doing what I do. Um, there's definitely, I feel super fortunate that my union is national, so I was able to transfer when I moved out here. But if you're like in LA and you're trying to like make it from the ground up, it's really hard. And like even in the union, like I still have to work for my jobs, and it's a lot of networking and just reminding people you exist, which unfortunately means being present on social media. And I always find that like after I make a post, I get a job call because it's just like, oh yeah, Alex is around. Maybe I should hire her. So it's this annoying little catch 22, but it's kind of part of how our society functions. Crazily, I'm just glad I'm not an actress. I heard recently that someone went out for a casting call, and in their audition they were asked how many followers they have, which is just like gut wrenching.
Oh, that is messed up.
Yeah, it's kind of nasty.
Jeez. Yeah, a little Black Mirror-ish.
Yeah, totally Black Mirror. Uh, but on the line of feast of famine, there will be strikes. Like every few years, our contract expires and we have to renegotiate. Um, Last year was a joint actors and writers strike, and this was the first time in like 20 years or so that those groups had struck at the same time. So it was a pretty big halt for the industry. Um, and there was less work before the strike in anticipation of the strike. So it wasn't just the strike and then, work stops. It's like, oh no, we're not gonna like start up because we hear there might be a strike. So there was a slowdown, there was the stoppage. And even now, the strike ended in November and it still hasn't really picked up. because the cruise contracts are actually being ratified right now. So it was like, well, let's wait until the crew gets their deal. And yes, Gwen, insidious it is. uh, so it's been a real roller coaster between COVID and then these intense like historical strikes. Um, but that's part of the business. Uh, so it was a slow year. I went to the movies this weekend to see a certain natural disaster movie that I did one day on, and the previews for the other movies coming out this year just for like horrendous looking. Like we got like a superhero movie about Santa Claus and like just these really like I'm just so over psychological like thriller, killer, murder tropes. I don't know. I don't, there's enough of that in society. I don't want to see that more in like our fiction work, personally. Um, but yeah, I thought I'd just show a so if you're ever wondering how they make big storms, it's basically just like a lot of fans, and then you got some guys here just chucking leaves into the fans, and that's your storm. So it was a lot of fun. Just a day for
Is that from the certain disaster film that has come out recently that shall
it
go unnamed?
is. Yeah. So there's
That's
a
awesome.
little little vehicle and deploying the probe.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
God,
yeah.
that's epic. Do you
And it was
know
shot on film.
that's so wild? Like it's kind of funny that like it's being received so well. And it's just like a such a weird like why is this movie happening? But then yeah, like it's turning out it's like it was a pretty good movie, and then yeah, to hear it was shot on film is also kind of hilarious. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's like, an homage to the original, which was shot on film. And I also started watching like the old Weather Channel Storm Chasers show, and like it's this dude with an IMAX camera and this like armored car he welded himself, and he's like, I gotta get the shot from inside the tornado. Um, so I don't know, it's pretty cool. Um, but since it was a slow year, I like, don't have anything super thrilling to report on. But 2 years ago, I worked in the Dominican Republic for a few months on a movie on Netflix called Naiad. So if you need a kick-ass lady at 65 doing the things, it's a pretty great biopic. Um, so I yeah, we went to the Dominican Republic, which is a little island, or it's half of an island. So logistically, this was all of our gear, which we had shipped. So I was in charge. I was the camera loader. So in addition to downloading the footage, making sure it's all good and keeping track of it all and keeping it all organized, I think I did the stats recently. It was like we had 8 different cameras, and over the course of the movie, I think it was like 57 terabytes of footage. Um, but it was like 100 hours of footage. Um, for what, a 2 hour movie. So that's kind of the ratio.
Yeah, that's bonkers. 57
Um,
terabytes.
we had about 150 cases of equipment, and every single item in each case has to be line itemed in order to ship it overseas. So we made a big old spreadsheet and kept track of it all and got it shipped over, and most importantly got it shipped back. So it was a big project. Um, and this was our stage we worked at. Most of the movie was shot at like a water stage. So you can see it's like a big pool, and then there's like a line where the blue screen is, and then there's the actual Atlantic Ocean. Or yeah, that's still the Atlantic down there. And so that blue screen is so they can, edit out the horizon line to get it to be seamless. And then those big dumpsters on the side are for storms. So they fill up with water and then dump into the pool and it makes these big waves. And then out of frame, there's a wave machine and it comes up and down and it makes this little wave in the pool. So yeah, a lot of the movie was shot in this pool. Just, dolly along, dolly the other way, go in the water on a raft a little bit and go on the boat. Uh, so yeah, that's a water stage. Um, yeah, cool things I wish I did when I was in college.
This
Apply
this
to
is
more.
like this is like custom built for you, Gwen, since you're like in your last few days of being a college
Yeah.
student.
Apply to grants because I feel like there's like 2 years you have after graduation, and then after that, you're not a student or a recent graduate anymore. You're an adult. And there's not even as many grants for adults in the real world. So like take advantage of all the student grants. Um, I know it's hard being in college and you're broke and you don't have money. You nevertheless money to save. But if you can, high yield savings account. Like there's savings accounts, like my Bank of America savings account earns like pennies a year. It's stupid. But then there's these whole other savings accounts, high yield savings accounts that earn like 5%. So I wish I had just, thrown in $100 every here and there and then into an account that actually grows. And so just something super simple and wish I had started years ago. So I just didn't know about them. Um, yeah. Use your student discounts while you can. I don't know if you guys get D&H discounts or anything else, but milk it and go to your local museums and events. Uh, that's networking, it's inspiration, it's super important, especially if you're in a smaller city. Like so much of the desire to not go around in LA is because everything involves traffic. And yeah.
Bellingham, the school where this class is based, is in a pretty cool physical location where it's a little far, but it's like 2 hours, 2.5 hours to Seattle, but also like 2.5 hours to Vancouver, Canada. And there's some pretty incredible art institutions up there. Um, that's something that I wish I took more advantage of when I lived in Bellingham, going up to Canada.
Yeah, and Vancouver is actually like a pretty big film hub too. Um, I think it's dwindled a bit in recent years, but it is a place in Canada for film. Okay, boring things that I wish I did that I do now is keep track of every kind of expense you can. So for example, this is an example of my yearly spreadsheet where I'm
This
just like,
this is my
okay.
favorite part of your talk when you open up a spreadsheet. Yes.
Um,
Thank
you
you so
know,
much for
like
telling me what to do about my taxes. I've been lost. I've been lost. It's ridiculous. Thank you.
it's so hard. Oh my God, you're screenshotting. Like it all
Is there
adds
anything
up.
here that I can't post on
No,
Instagram?
it's okay. I'll zoom in a little more for you.
Yeah.
Like $400 to host a website, that's ridiculous. Write it off.
Yeah.
Keeping my car alive, $1,700. Insurance, more money. Creative Cloud, dear God, it gets so expensive after you graduate. So you have to like call and be like, I'm gonna cancel unless you give me a discount. And they're like, okay. So you have to like be on top of it. Um, Fixing broken things, random crap for work, printer ink is so expensive. Try and get production to pay for it when you can. Taking, those coffees I talked about, you become an adult, now they're lunches. So you gotta keep track of those. Um, Gotta pay my dues to the union. I love them, but I'm gonna try and write off some of those dues if I can. Education, it's gotten a little harder to write these off, but I still like keep track of like, oh, I went to the movies and here's my ticket, receipt. Education. Because I always stay for the credits and be like, okay, who do I know who worked on this? Sweet. And then I'll text them and be like, yo, you did a great job. And that's just one way of keeping track with keeping in touch with people. Staying alive is really expensive in America. So, and I'm not even like, I'm a generally healthy person. So, yeah, that's that spreadsheet.
Oh
Um,
my gosh, I forgot about that last time. I love it.
and it's good to have 1099 income. You can't really have it in California anymore, or it's very unlikely that you do. But in other states, it's a little easier, I think. And having 1099 income is great because it helps you write off some of those things because no longer, thanks to certain tax laws, you can no longer write off for W-2 jobs because the assumption is that your employer is getting all these things. It doesn't always happen. So it's nice to have the 1099 to buffer it a bit. Keeping track of your jobs. I have a similar spreadsheet, which I'm not going to show, but it's just like, what company did I work for? What company did they do business as? Because that's different. What was the payroll company for their job? Because that's who you put as your employer when you're on unemployment. How much did I make? What was my rate on that job? It's just really nice to have a list to reference. And then at the end of the year, you're like, okay, I got 5 payroll companies. I got 5 W-2s. Cool. I'm ready for tax time. Um, Otherwise it's chaos. Uh, it's a digital age. Identity theft is real. So there are 3 credit bureaus. They're called Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. It's all such a scam of like handshakes between people to like make money to like look for you on the dark web. But they are legally required to have a free version, and they make it super hard to find the free version. And it really wants you to auto sign up, for their $20 a month credit monitoring. But don't do it. Just make the free account and put a freeze on your credit. Because for some reason, aka handshakes, in this country, the fact like your credit is open, it's unfrozen by default. So other people could open a credit card in your name, and you have to do a lot of work to make it so only you can open a card in your name, which is ridiculous. But by putting a freeze on it, you're just saying you're just adding another layer of protection. So like if you apply for a credit card, you unfreeze it, and then you apply for your credit card, and hopefully you get the credit card, and then you freeze it again. And it's just making it so other people can't use your name and open up a Sprint account in your name and rack up a few thousand and then goes to collections. And then you have all these nasty things in your credit report that aren't you. True story. Keep an eye on your credit. It's stupid, but it's a game, but it's important. So, um, I hate dealing with this stuff. So I have a really cool tax accountant who works specifically with people in the film industry and gets that this line of work is a little nutty. And I also have a financial advisor who is also really cool. And she was a former Hydroflex assistant. And Hydroflex is a company who makes underwater housing for cameras. So she gets the business too and has helped me open portfolios and all the things of investing. So I'm a huge fan of paying people who know what they do to do a job that you don't know how to do. I like specialization. So yeah, personal practice. I think in college, you have all these dreams and you're like, wow, I'm gonna go out in the world and change all these things. And then you graduate and you're like, God, I got bills to pay. And dreams kind of can fall off the wayside. And or the dream changes. And I think it's really easy to have this internal doubt if you're like, God, I just like, I'm not aspiring for that anymore. Like I've lost it, what's wrong with me? But really, it's just for me, it was that, the dream changed, and that's okay. Um, I'm very satisfied with how I am currently living life, making a good wage, making other people's photos as a technician. And then I use that money to make my own work. And then I don't have the stress of like trying to sell it or, be an artist. And my practice is for me. And for me, that's enough. So yeah, I have a little darkroom practice. I shoot mostly large format film. So for those who aren't familiar, there's different sizes of film. You know, you start on 35 millimeter films, like yay big, and then you have 120 film, which is generally a square. And then you have large format, which starts at 4 by 5 inches. And that's the photo on the right and the bottom left. And so like each negative is 4 by 5 inches large. It's larger than IMAX. When you develop it, it's like the most magical thing to pull out of the chemistry and hold up to the light and like, oh my God, this is huge. Um, and for me, I love it because it's a really cumbersome camera to take around, and it's a really slow process. It's really expensive, so it makes you like really commit. But I love throwing on my backpack and going through a river and taking maybe 4 shots for the day. Because after college, I was so like distraught with the state of photography. Oh my God, there's too many photos. Everyone is a photographer. We don't need it. Like there's every image has been made, and I have this little, post-art school existential crisis. And I kind of took a break from photography for a while. And what got me back into it was like the slowest, most cumbersome process there is. And it's very zen for me. So that's
I can't. I mean, you said that was. I was going to ask you, like, is that you fording a river with your view camera, your
yeah.
4x5 camera? Oh my gosh!
That was for my birthday last year.
Oh, what a fantastic birthday! Jeez, that's
I
awesome.
know. My best friend and I, like, we did a 10-hour hike. It was stupid, but she has a 4 by 5 too. And we just like did 7 stream crossings with our big old cameras and spent the day outside. It was lovely.
Wow, that is epic. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, and you don't have to have a big fancy setup to, do what you love. For the longest time, I had a bathtub darkroom, and I built a cart for my enlarger, which you can kind of see in the right photo, but it's spec'd so it would roll over a toilet. So I would roll it into the bathroom and I would print, and then I would roll it out when I needed it to be a bathroom again. So you make do. But nowadays I have a little art studio of my own, and it's like just a little guest house in someone's backyard. And it's my little hidey hole. I go and process there. And it's really nice to be able to leave chemistry in the sink overnight and not have to clean up right away. So that's my little studio.
So
Uh,
awesome. So cool.
yeah. And the
The
past
bird thing.
The bird thing. In the past year, my partner has gotten into falconry. And so we've been meeting falconers across the state, and I've kind of been getting to know them and taking their picture along the way. So this is like a little bit of some recent portraits. But I recently injured my shoulder, so I haven't been hauling around the big old camera, and I've been doing a lot of scanning at home. So I've been going through a couple archives, some family, some just mystery archives. And there's something very meditative just working with an archive. And there's the mystery when you're, going through all these slides and you're like, oh my gosh, like who are these people? I have names. I think that's that person. That must be the grandmother. And it's just crazy. Like this is my late uncle on the left. And I'm like, you grew up in a world with like a cool car and palm trees? Like that's insane.
Yeah, that's your normal. Yeah, wild.
Um, and like Kodachrome slides are just so lovely to work with. Like it's just such a poppy red that doesn't really exist in our film stocks today, which is a bummer. Um, and then on the right is like a photo. My mom bought this at an auction and sent it to me. But what I think is really funny is if you look in the bottom right corner, you can see the seam of the backdrop, and that this is totally just like a studio. This is the original equivalent of like going somewhere and taking a photo in front of a green screen, and then it's like, hey, you were at the Eiffel Tower. But it's just like the Victorian version of it. And I think there's something very lovely and comical and commercial about our desire to stage these photos at the same locations across the world, so we all have the exact same photo. Um, yeah, that's there we go. That's a bit of my archive. And if you're curious, I'm on Instagram. And then I also run my union's sustainability account. And I'm always trying to collaborate with the other unions and make motions to make our industry a little bit greener. So if you're curious about that, I run the bottom account too.
Can
So
you just real quick, can you talk about that, your efforts with sustainability and maybe a couple of like examples of things that you have done?
yeah, totally. So in the film world, your most polluting things on set are your food waste and your fuel consumption. Your fuel consumption is from your idling vans, your use of generators powering things all the time, the travel of the crew, moving a whole village location to location, flying them. As fun as it is to travel, it's pretty detrimental to the environment. Um, and food waste, like you obviously don't want to go to work and there's like you run out of food, but to compensate, a lot of times there's just like tons of food just thrown out. I've seen platters of uneaten salmon just thrown in the trash, and it's heartbreaking. Not only, especially in LA where we have such food insecurity in our population, but that the landfills are getting choked up with methane from the decomposition of food. So it's not helping anybody, just throwing it in the trash. So there's companies that do food reallocation, and they'll come to sets and take them to populations that need the food, which is great. And but you have to budget for that, and you have to plan ahead of time. And a lot of people just aren't aware of their existence. And then energy wise, we are starting to develop more solar powered generators and trailers and trucks, and have more or cleaner energy sources. Because you think of even like a smaller generator that's powering some lights and you're shooting in a neighborhood. Some neighborhoods don't allow generators because they're so noisy and it's just too much noise pollution. So not only for the sake of like, we need to find new solutions in order to film at places, it's just healthier. Poor electricians are like constantly like working by the generators, and they're getting like all this gas up in their business, and it's loud. It's not sanitary. So there's other options we need to focus on. So what our union has done, it's been a lot of really like small pieces right now as we've kind of gathered momentum and credibility to work towards larger goals. But we started, tree planting in honor of our members who have passed. And we got recycling there's these things called P-Touch cartridges, which are just like little cassettes you put in label makers. And then the company will take them back. So we got drop-offs for those cassettes in rental houses across the country. And more recently, we partnered with this really cool company in LA called EcoSet, who is a set reallocator. So like at the end of a show, instead of production paying for a dumpster to throw all their sets away in, they pay to have the sets go to this warehouse where then the public can grab those sets for free. So it's a really great way to promote circularity and get things reused, because they should be. We're still using wood to build sets, and it's like, okay, we're going to run out eventually. And so we partnered with EcoSet to also have them as a hub for expendables, meaning your tape and your Sharpies and your canned air and all of the little things that are considered expendables in movies. So if you have extra at the end of the movie, you can take them now to this place and they'll be available to the community. So we've been doing things like that and just working with the other unions to try and see how we can gain momentum and collectively make some changes. So slow going, but
That's incredible. I mean, all that EcoSet stuff sounds really incredible.
yeah, they're really killing it. So
Yeah. We have a couple of minutes. Can you, what is going on with this upper right image? What is that?
That was from a little indie movie in Richmond, or like a TV show, a pilot. And it's that sand monster is a puppet. So the guy underneath the table was operating the puppet. Um, that was a cute sand monster.
That is adorable. Yeah. Wait, do you really? Gwen, you know this puppet?
I think so, or something very, very similar.
Huh.
Where did you say it?
It's from a pilot called The Magic Shed.
Was that streaming anywhere, or was it anywhere? Because I think I've seen it.
I might have gone to a festival. I honestly don't know
I think
what.
it was a festival. I went to one festival, and I might have seen it there.
Oh my gosh, that's really cool.
That would be wild.
The most obscure reference I put in this slide deck.
I know, but like it's so cute. He's a little sand guy. I remember him so much.
Oh,
That's
that's wild.
incredible. Um, yeah. Gwen, do you have any questions? Not to put you on the spot. Also, we can cut
I
recording
do
now if
have a
you would
couple
prefer.
questions.
Okay. Is it
Um,
okay if we record them?
sure, that
Okay.
should be fine. I was wondering because you said you had something to do with archival film. Were you like actually in the archives?
Sorry, are they actually what archives?
Like in like archives where you're dealing with old
Oh,
like photos piled up?
got you. No, these are generally just like an archive, meaning a case of slides that I have at one time purchased from an antique store. And I'm referring to a
No, I
family.
love that too. I love that too. That's what I was thinking too. I'm like, how did you get into that? How did
Yeah.
you like you just picked it up at an antique store? You were just checking them
Yeah.
out, restoring them?
Yeah. Like I love antiquing. I love old stuff. I love fixing old stuff. And it's cool to see someone else's life because it's such a personal window and
It
it's just been
is.
discarded and is available for sale. And it's this really
I
weird
know.
thing that exists. And um, I don't know, there's a really lovely contemplation that arises out of seeing someone's intimate moments.
I feel that way too whenever I find old images or old paintings. I'm like, someone put a lot of time into this, and it's just here in the Goodwill. Like,
Yeah,
wow.
it's crazy.
I also
Um,
had a question about you said you're moving like tiny little villages every time you move set. And I volunteered on like an acting set before where there were actors on a play stage. And I was wondering, would it be interesting if you got a chef to make your food? I mean, to make your food to order, you'd have to pay for the chefs and you'd have to pay for the food, but they could probably tailor everything so there's a lot less waste.
It's a good idea. And breakfast is kind of done that way. And also I realized how totally bougie it is. Like, oh, I get breakfast and lunch at work. Like, I know that's totally bonkers.
No, if you're there all
But
day, if you're there all
um,
day, they need to feed you. Like,
um, breakfast is usually there's a buffet of like your staples, and then the truck is kind of made to order if you want something extra. Um,
mm,
I think just
mhm.
logistically, there's no way lunch would end if 100 people were doing made to order. So it
Yeah,
has
that
to
would
be
make sense as
prepared.
well. You'd have to like, I was thinking because my dad was on a Navy ship, and so they'd had like, I was thinking about
Mm,
how a Navy ship contains its own waste because it's basically a moving little city on a
yeah,
boat. And then so I'm thinking, how does it contain its own waste? How does it recycle its own waste? Well, basically, they have standard ingredients, standard portions, and they make standard set fare. And like, it's not fancy or fun, but it is food, and you get to eat it.
yeah. No,
And so
it's
I'm thinking
funny.
like the recycling the waste thing.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny, like my dad was in the Navy and I'm like, huh, I ended up in like the next closest
I
industry
know,
to the
right?
military. It's
Me
like totally
too. My dad's
bonkers, but it
military too.
functions similarly. That's cool.
The art world, yeah, it does. It's like so many compartments, so many structures. You know, they all touch each other, but they do not communicate. They do not communicate. Um, I've seen solar panel generators recently. I have, and I don't think they're going to put out as much output as you need to run all your camera equipment. But certainly, I think it's cool and could be something like worthy of investing in. But I know that your union probably can't do much investing in technology and stuff like that. But like if we could get the word out there, maybe we could all start getting solar power generators or something like that. Because I
Yeah.
heard what you said about the guys standing next to it and just coughing it up. I'm like, they have to stand there with the cameras, I guess.
Yeah. It's tough. And I have had solar power on sets and on trucks, but it's usually right now we're still in that transitional phase where everything is
Yeah,
new and no one knows how to use it. And
yeah.
it's a learning curve. And so we need to focus on education in order to show people that these new tools are reliable and
Hmm.
how they can be used. Because yeah, sure, a solar power generator, depending on which model, isn't gonna power all of your lights for the day, but it can power base camp where the production office is and the hair and makeup trailer
Yeah,
is.
if you
So
cut down on at least 50% of your carbon generators, you've got at least 50% of your carbon reduced. Like
yeah,
small steps matter. It doesn't have to be a complete overthing overnight. I'm very
exactly.
excited.
I wish you were on the committee with me.
I know.
No.
Sounds like Gwen's angling for a job. Nice.
Yeah.
ISML internship.
I
No,
wish it's
I'd
all
like to. I really like
volunteers.
the film. The films are so cute, but I'm up in Washington and I assume you're back down in LA.
Yeah. But yeah,
I will
it's
be following you on Instagram though.
thanks.
I will be following you though. Yeah. It's so nice to talk to you.
Oh, likewise. Thank you for coming and participating.
Of
Yeah,
course. I'm
seriously.
surprised I was
Thanks.
the only one that showed up. I'm surprised.
I know, yeah, but thank you for being here.
Of
Um,
course, of course.
Alex, this has been amazing. I always learn something new every time, and it's just so cool to touch base, and it's just so wild to think that this you're sort of like recipe for success of like apply for student grants and then like buy people that you want to network with coffee, like, and then
Yes.
here you
Yes.
are. It's wild.
I think
Honestly, the best
also,
networking tips I've ever heard are
oh,
those tips.
the classics, coffee, emails. I think it's also just so important just to show up. We're in such a transactional and what do you call it? Non-committal society, and just showing genuine interest and showing up for it. It's crazy how far that'll get you. So, and obviously some of it is luck and timing, but another component is hard work and applying yourself. So, in due time.
I would definitely say like you benefited from being at the right place at the right time like many times in your career just from like my outward perspective, but also you were in the wrong place at the wrong time like so many times also, and you struggled through it and you worked through it. Like COVID happened like right when you got to LA, and then the strike, this historic monumental strike happened. Like that's not like right place right time, but you slogged through that, and yeah, I'm really impressed with that.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah. So that's a
um
refreshing take.
yeah, yeah. Cool. Well, anyways, Gwen, any last questions for Alex before we let her go?
Not so much a question is you have given me the most down to earth presentation I've ever had in like my college career. You gave me the goods, the bads, the uglies. You gave me life advice on my taxes. Who else has done that? No one else has done that. You told me like save for this, shoot for this, watch out for this pitfall because it got me. And it's the best one I've ever had. I'm sorry that other people didn't like come see it. This was really good. I'm gonna watch the video again to do my assignment. Like,
No, you just made my day.
oh yeah, I
Oh,
was hoping to.
that's
Oh
awesome.
yeah, just pass that genuineness on forward because like you're like, oh, LA, Hollywood, fake people, and like sure they exist, but it's
It's
full of
hard.
genuine
It's
people
hard.
too.
My friend moved down to LA to do her psychology master's down there, and she's
Mm.
like, it is different. It is different. She's been to Washington, she's been to Oregon, but as soon as she got to California, she's like, I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to do it. I don't.
Hard.
That's awesome. Well, cool. Alex, thank you again so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I will send you this video when it is posted.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Take care.
Alex.
Have a wonderful rest of your evening, you two.
Likewise. Thank you
Okay.
so much, Dana. This was
Bye.
fun.
All right. See ya.
Bye.
Bye. See you.